We're pulling apart the pages of a book called Conversion and Regeneration, Psychological Change and the New Birth Distinguished, written by S.C. Sales. So let's dig in. This paper, or rather book, takes on a topic that, honestly, has been causing confusion for centuries in Christian theology, and that's the tangled relationship between human religious experience, how people feel or report feeling changed, and what is seen as divine saving action. In other words, God's work in making someone spiritually new. This stuff gets at questions like, wait, did I really change? Was that feeling I had proof that something bigger than me acted in my life? Or should I trust more in my memory of an intense experience, or in what, say, the Bible tells me about God's work? Big questions, right? Sales is focusing in on two words that have gotten, kind of merged together when maybe they shouldn't be: conversion and regeneration. Conversion is usually describing that human experience part, the sense of turning around, making a new start, however you'd put it. Regeneration, that's more about the divine part, the new birth, the idea that something absolutely radical and non-human is happening. And here's the kicker. Lots of traditions say, yes, those two are different. But in day-to-day life, when people are talking about their spiritual stories, or even just trying to figure out, am I really in, those lines get totally blurred. And the reason Sales cares about this, it's not just academic navel-gazing. He argues that this confusion has real, measurable consequences for people, especially when it comes to assurance, which in this context means being confident about your standing with God. If we look for assurance in our own experience, did I feel a certain thing? Was it intense enough? Instead of in something God did, we end up, according to Sales, making a pretty big category error. Salvation, instead of being grounded in something outside ourselves, suddenly becomes hostage to the ups and downs of memory, feelings, or whatever narrative we try to build later. So how does this book go about sorting all that out? What's neat is the methodology. Sales isn't just shouting doctrine and telling people to ignore their feelings, nor is he telling everyone to trust whatever pops up in their experience. He begins, very deliberately, by letting the phenomenon, the actual psychological experience of conversion, have its say, describe first, analyze later. That's his rule. Experience gets a full airing, but it's not allowed to take over and become the final judge about matters of salvation. Only then does theological reflection step in. Sales describes this as a kind of procedural discipline. It's not just nitpicking. It's a way to be, honestly, more compassionate, more human. Because real people, after all, sometimes suffer when pastors or leaders just stamp a big theological label on their struggles. Maybe someone who's had a super dramatic experience gets lots of assurance, and someone else who comes quietly into faith ends up anxious and introspective, always wondering if they missed the real thing. And isn't it interesting how, whatever institution you're in, these debates seem to crop up over and over again? And, side note, honestly, this reminds me of how we see in so many domains, not just theology, this tension between subjective experience and, some more objective standard, like in medicine or in how people remember past events. It's just fascinating, but I'm getting off track. Anyway, the core argument is that when conversion and regeneration are blended together, when the lines get fuzzy, people end up looking to things like memory, the intensity of their feelings, how convincing their personal narrative is, or evidence of moral change for their assurance. And Sales is arguing that's not just a slip-up, it's a systematic error. He's really serious about the consequences, false assurance for people who happen to be dramatic, maybe false despair for people who aren't, and just endless, really endless self-analysis where actual rest might be available. What does this mean for you listening? Whether you're a person of faith, interested in philosophy, or just curious about how people make sense of change, there's something practical here. This research reminds us to be careful not just with the content of our beliefs, but with how we treat those around us who may experience life's big shifts quietly or loudly, and to avoid making experience the judge and jury of deeper reality. There's wisdom in just slowing down, describing things carefully, and only then sorting out what matters most. So that's the core of what SC Sales is offering. It's not about novelty for its own sake or making a splash. Instead, it's about patience, clear categories, and listening, so that real people can find rest instead of anxiety, and those caring for them can act with more compassion.